Hey guys, it's Bree here at Blossom and Branch Farm, and I know that this time of year we often have greenhouse envy. We think, oh, if I only had a greenhouse, all the things that I could grow. I'm here to tell you that you can make your own pop-up greenhouse using a raised bed and a few other materials you can get at the hardware store, and it takes less than an hour. So like I mentioned, we do grow in a glass greenhouse. Now, glass actually doesn't have the best R value, which is insulative properties. In fact, it's kind of a bit of a heat sieve, and we heat it with an electric space heater, but it does get costly. Now, there are alternatives, and we built one today, and I want to show you. So this is actually a 4x8 raised bed that we have built a hoop structure around and used it to contain our seedlings. Now, a double layer of nice thick greenhouse plastic can actually have a very similar R value or insulative properties as our glass greenhouse over here, which might surprise you. And if you were to invest in a layer of bubble wrap, it would actually, if you were to invest in a layer of bubble wrap, it would actually insulate quite well. Now, in addition to this double layer of plastic, we could also do a layer of frost fabric inside for nights when it's getting very cold. So this structure might still be a little bit cold for germinating seedlings, but it's very good for growing them on because they'll have access to our best natural grow lights, which is the sun. And also it's going to help harden them off. So if you need a good space for hardening off, this works great. You can just clip it up to ventilate it during the day and then close it back up at night. I'm also going to show how to pop a heater in here to help keep the temperatures up if you're growing things that enjoy warmer temperatures. These raised beds, my sheep are yelling at me. I'm going to be building my pop-up raised bed greenhouse here on one of my raised beds. And so these are 4x8. So what I'm going to be doing is a hoop every 2 feet. And that's because we get snow. So in case we get snow, I want to make sure this is nice and secure. So this should be able to hold up to snow. So that's every 2 feet. So if you have a 6-foot long bed, you'll only need 3 hoops. Because I'll need 2 pieces of rebar for each hoop. I will need 4 PVC hoops that are 10 feet long, and my rebar are going to be a 1/2 inch diameter. When you're in the hardware store, you'll want to test to make sure that the PVC piping fits over your rebar, because if you get too big of a rebar, the PVC won't fit over. I'll also need a piece of nylon rope or a clothesline and some clamps. We get these at Harbor Freight. I'll link them below. They're just 2-inch clamps, and that's what we use to hold the plastic onto the hoops. Let's get building because it's cold. All right, so here is our rebar. So you can see this is actually a 24-inch length. This would work for a deeper bed. It's probably a little bit deeper than what I need because my beds are not quite that deep. So you could even go to an 18-inch piece of rebar, and again, it's a 1/2 inch diameter. So we're gonna go ahead and use this one. It'll work fine. I have a big sledgehammer. Depending on if your soil is frozen or not, you may get away with just using a regular hammer. We're gonna go ahead and put these in on the ends and then 2 in the middle, so every 2 feet. All right, then we're gonna put some 2 hoops in the middle, about every 2 feet. You can measure it if you want. I'm gonna eyeball it. And our last 2 directly across. So my bed width is 4 feet. This would work for a 3-foot wide bed as well. You'll just have a taller hoop structure. All right, so we have those in. Now we're gonna go ahead and fit our PVC over them. Oh, this is actually 1/2 inch PVC. Okay, so we did 8 pieces of rebar, 1/2 inch diameter, and now this is 1/2 inch PVC. Now again, this is meant to be the quick version of this. We also have metal hoops made with electrical metal conduit, but if you don't have a hoop bender, that can be a bit of an investment. The whole point here is to save you some money so that you're able to make a quick pop-up greenhouse. That's where this PVC comes in. So again, it's a 10-foot length and a 1/2 inch diameter. So this is just gonna fit right over our rebar. And I just slide it down as far as possible. Now bear in mind, this is not meant to be a long-term structure. The PVC actually does have an interaction with the greenhouse plastic. So if you were to keep this up for a couple of years, it would start to degrade the plastic. So if you want to do this as a long-term thing, I would recommend investing in a hoop bender. Johnny's Seeds makes them, and just get the right hoop bender for the width of your bed, and then you can bend your own hoops using electrical metal conduit at home. So you don't need any special equipment. to put these PVC hoops in, they just bend right into place. You can see we've used these hoops before, which is why they already have this shape. Once you bend them, they will kind of hold a bent shape. The first time you do this, you'll have to pull them down to get them onto the other side. So now that I have my hoop structure in place, I'm going to do one more thing to make sure it's nice and secure in case of snow loads. And that's going to involve our nylon rope or clothesline. All right, so I have 2 more pieces of rebar, and these are going to go in on either end of our little mini greenhouse. This is to help provide a little bit of security from wind and also from snow. So these 2 pieces actually go in on the outside of the bed and at an angle. So I'm gonna put them in at about a 45-degree angle. That way I'm gonna have some tension to pull on with my rope. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. All right, now I have my piece of nylon rope, and I'm gonna start by tying a knot onto these rebar that we just hammered in here at an angle. Okay, and now I'm gonna take the length of my rope and I'm going to go around these PVC hoops from one hoop to the next hoop to provide lateral stability. So I'm going to give some good tension onto these hoops, because again, I wanna make sure this provides some nice security against snow loads if we get them. So I start by giving a little bit of outward tension on this first hoop. I go around twice, keeping that tension, and then I go to the next hoop and do the same thing. So basically creating a spine for our little greenhouse. And then to the last one, and then we're gonna attach down to that rebar again. I like to give it a nice top pull. You can see how much more secure it is now. And then I go down to this rebar and give it a tie off. All right, now we're ready to put our seedlings in and our greenhouse cover on. I mentioned I'm doing a double layer of plastic. That's because that's going to give it a better R value. If you even did a layer of bubble wrap outside of this, that would really help retain heat. In fact, the R value of doing a double layer of plastic is basically equivalent to my glass greenhouse. Now you want to make sure that the width is the same width as your hoops. So in this case, 10 feet. This has to be at least 10 feet wide, ideally a little bit wider. You can use plastic sheeting that you get at the hardware store, but I would recommend using a greenhouse film, at least an 8 mil thickness, because it's going to be UV rated. It's going to hold up better, so you can reuse this year over year. And you also want to make sure that it's long enough to go down to the sides, that rebar that you attach down there. If you cut it just the length of your bed, so in this case 8 feet, it's not going to be long enough, it'll be open on the ends. So just remember that. Okay, so I have my first layer of plastic on. I'm going to go ahead and clamp it just to hold it in place while I put the second sheet on. And what I do is I just use my little clips, pull all the way down, and clamp as far down as possible. And do that on all of the hoops. So I have 8 clips total. Make sure you're pulling it taut, because you don't want air getting in underneath that plastic. This is why it's good to have a little extra length if you can, so that it'll drape down over the edges of your raised bed. And reclip. And now I just secure with those same clips. So the last thing to do are the ends. You have a couple options on your ends. You can either just tie a rope around down at ground level to your rebar that also encloses all of your plastic, tie it tight, and you're good. You could also use a zip tie. Those are the 2 things I use. You could go very crazy with it and get a ratchet set and all this stuff. I just don't really find it necessary. Now you have an option. So if you want to just use this for season extension, you can do that. You could grow crops earlier in the spring, later in the fall. It's really nice for that. And as I mentioned, you could also use it for hardening off seedlings. So if you have some seedlings that are somewhat cold tolerant, but it's not quite time yet for them to go out, this is going to offer a good amount of protection for them. Do monitor the temperature. So I recommend a small wireless thermometer, or just come out here and check the temperature every once in a while until you get a feel for how much warmer it is inside the structure versus outside. I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to try using this as a greenhouse. So I'm gonna actually pop a greenhouse heater into this structure. What you're going to want to do if you're going to put a heater into this is make sure that you don't have debris around the heater area. We don't want anything to catch on fire. Now, these heaters are greenhouse rated. There's always a risk of overheating, so I'm just gonna make sure I don't have any dried leaves or debris around the heater area. But first I'm gonna put my seedlings in here. So to access, all I do is I unclip one end, fold it up, and you can clip it again as you're working in there. And now I'm going to pop my seedlings in here that I'm hardening off. I'm a safety first kind of gal, so I'm actually going to even put my heater on a little fiberglass tray just to be safe. Again, using a moisture rated heater is important here if you're going to use this as a greenhouse space, because there is moisture in there. And also most greenhouse heaters have a backup safety function so that if they tip over, they will turn off. Make sure that you're using an outdoor rated extension cord for this because it could get wet. And I'm also going to go ahead and make sure that the entire plug for this structure is inside. I'm just going to clamp it back down. I will monitor the temperature for the first few nights just to make sure that everything is staying the temperature you want, but this is a quick and easy way to do a pop-up greenhouse if you don't have the funds for a greenhouse this year. All right guys, thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make a few other structures, we also have our big cattle panel hoop house. We have a tunnel that is longer than this. It shows the construction very similar to this. Either of those two options are going to help with season extension if that's something you're looking to do. All right, we hope you enjoyed it, and make sure you like and subscribe. We'll see you next time at the farm.